curious how much that's either like a gatekeeper or something that helps get you more competitive in industry. I say with my measly bachelor's.
I'm probably gonna ask the same question too.
You don't need one. I don't know if your answers are gonna be the same as mine. They might not.
Yeah.
So my answer as a programmer is you don't need one. I did it mostly because we're getting paid for most of mine, and I would not have done it otherwise. And doing it while I was.
Did you boost, like a pay boost at all?
They did by coincidence. I was going to ask for one, and then they gave me one, and I was like, is this because I finished my degree? And they were like, no. And I was like, all right, well, I'm not gonna ask because they gave me more than I was gonna ask for. But, so, it can give you a pay bump. I think most programmers are like cynical, realistic people who feel that if you can do the job, they don't care where your degree is from or how many you have or where you went to school. I've had bosses that didn't have master's degrees. I've worked with people who didn't actually graduate with a bachelor's. So like the bachelor's, I would say is a gate, because a lot of places like recruiters are looking at your resume before anybody else, and they'll just not really look at it if you don't have the bachelor's degree at least. And maybe someday the master's will be required because enough people will have them, but I think today is not like that. So my advice would be, you should do it if you want to and somebody else is paying for a good amount of it, like at least half. I think I got like 70% of mine paid for.
That's good.
Yeah.
For me, it was kind of an accident. I came into DePaul thing with my high school, and it put me about a year ahead when I came in to graduate, and so I would have finished my undergrad in 3 years regardless. And so if I tacked on the 4+1 program, it's called the 4+1 program, but for me, because of my accelerated timeline, it ended up being a 3+1. And because my parents and myself all together budgeted for 4 years of college, it would have cost the same either way, and so it was just something that I felt like I really wanted to do, not only because financially it made sense for me and my family, but also because it put me on the same graduation timeline with all of my friends. And I felt like I would feel better socially if I didn't have to up and leave a year before all of my friends were also going to enter the job market as well.
Many things to say. So I also worked in higher education, so I got a job. So because I had business experience, I got a job in a dean's office, and so I had tuition remission. So I agree. I say this as a professor. Try to get someone to pay for your education or at least subsidize.
Well, so it's different answers for the internship part when I was a student and for the part after I graduated.
Oh, so you interned there while you were a student and that led to you getting the job later, is that correct?
So I was an intern at NetherRealm from like the spring of my junior year to the fall of my senior year, because it's 9 months. And I kind of got that because people, like engineers from NetherRealm, tend to try to recruit like intern, junior, associate level from here because we know that it's a great program, and from the team that I work on now at the table, and you kind of make connections that way. And some of the people in my classes were getting those internships and stuff too, so it was kind of about knowing people. I mean, you also have to apply, and there's a phone, like an email screen and a phone interview and an on-site interview that now is not on-site anymore. And so you kind of get in even the process kind of from knowing someone, but then it doesn't really like get you a job, right? And then as far as so then after that I worked at Phosphor, and that was from like, I met somebody at IGDA Chicago Industry Night
What
that
does
year.
IGDA stand for?
It's the International Game Developers Association.
Okay.
Hosts all kinds of talks and panels and events that you should go to meet people who work in games and can help you with your career. And I went to their like holiday party, which is a thing for charity, And I met somebody there at Phosphor, and I was like, yeah, I did the internship in Netherrealm, and they were looking for more programmers. And then so that's again, like, I still had to interview, you know, you don't just get a job, but like to know somebody who's like, oh yeah, you should apply, and you know, here's my business card or whatever. Then to get the full-time at Wargaming after I graduated, it was like another student that I knew from here who graduated before me was working there as a producer and recruited me to that. And that was fun because I applied and didn't really hear back, and then I went to GDC that year, Game Developers Conference, and
You should be writing that down.
and back then there was a huge career center area where companies made big, attractive booths, and Wargaming was there, and I was like, hey, is this recruiter like here? And they were like, yeah, he's right over there. And I was like, hey, I emailed you. Like, and he's like, oh, I'll totally get back to you. And then he did, and then I got that job.
Oh, wow.
So,
Following up in person.
yeah, in
Not
person,
stalking,
thousands of
just
miles away.
following up.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
everyone's wish.
So I guess they've all been about like knowing one person in a way, to just kind of get a foot in the door to get the right person to look at my resume.
Totally.
So it's a very long answer to the question you asked me.
I mean, I feel enlightened personally.
Great.
Would you like to?
My journey here is very different because I'm an academic, apparently. Been doing
I feel
it
like
for
that's interesting
10 years.
though.
Okay, I can share that part. I feel like good point, because I did not plan to be an academic, so you may not plan to be and you may become one. So here's the sort of shorter version of this. So I went to grad school, as I mentioned, to my MFA.
What made you decide to go back to school?
Great question. I studied business IT because it seemed like the right thing to do at the time, and it wasn't creative enough, and I knew I wanted to go back to grad school, but I didn't know what, and I don't think you should just go to grad school because just because you have to go. You should want to go for the right reason and the right program. And so I eventually found Parsons in Design Technology, and what was the question? Grad school, right. So I wanted to be more creative, and I love the idea that it's called Design and Technology. What are you making? Something that is design and technology. I ended up making games, and I actually went into the program thinking I was not a traditional gamer, and I played a lot of strategy games and Nintendo like as a younger person, but like kind of hadn't played for a long time, and so I didn't see myself as a gamer, and then realized that I was very much interested in social impact and global issues, and there was an opportunity to take Intro to Game Design in the same semester that there was a humanitarian design course for the UN. And so by taking those at the same time, I ended up making a game for the UN. Like, again, not something you think you would just do out of the gate, but just opportunity. So timing is everything. And through that, made connections in the humanitarian space, and people were talking about games. And they didn't necessarily know about games, but they were like, well, so-and-so said games can work in this space, and supposedly you know how to make them, so we'll hire you for a project. Like, it's long story short. And seeing that you know someone, and they trust that person who says that you can do something, and you get your foot in the door. I did a design fellowship, and this is as a faculty person, I'll say take advantage of opportunities. As a student, there was a design fellowship through my grad program, and I spent 2 months as a design fellow in Nairobi, Kenya for I've been to Africa many times through my design work. And again, not something that I thought would just happen, but it did. And so I did like information design. What?
Did they pay for you to
They,
go?
everything was covered. I got a stipend too. So all my expenses and the stipend.
And what are you going there for exactly?
Right, so I was placed with a NGO, a non-government organization that was advocating for the rights of people living with HIV/AIDS. And so they needed information design. So like, I was doing graphic design and web design for them. Like that's what I was doing. But it was funded by Open Society Foundations. Opportunity. So I said to the person that I met through OSF, I was like, I don't know what your needs are, but I am a designer, I'm in grad school, and I'm available if you want to continue collaborating. And there's this thing called the International AIDS Conference. It's every 2 years. And so the next one was going to be in Washington, D.C., which is actually where I'm from. And I was like, it's an international conference, it rotates. It had been in, I think it was in Austria that year. And I was like, the next one's in DC, it's in our backyard, let's do something. Like, I'm offering myself, like, to help design something for this next conference. And they were like, well, we're researching how the practice of criminalizing the possession of condoms is an issue and affects sex workers in many places around the globe, including especially these 6 countries that we're researching. So we're doing a report. Do you want to make a game? What do you want to make? A game? Like, you know how to make games? We don't know what that looks like, but do you want to try to make a game on this issue? And I'm like, I know nothing about the issue. And that is an interesting topic to like attempt this design practice. And I said, sure, why not? Like, let's try it. And so I made the game Cops and Rubbers. I can't take full credit for the title, but isn't that great? It's not robbers. Everyone hears robbers. No, it's a you.
Wait, that's amazing.
Yeah, so copsandrubbers.com.
Goodness gracious.
I'll check my analytics after, this week. But yeah, so it was a tabletop experience because I didn't have, it was a commission project. I would say, I can't remember the exact number, like just over $10,000, right? So like as a grad student, I'll take that, right? And it was a project I was doing alongside my graduate studies.
Totally.
And it was literally like, I had a fellowship opportunity because at school I took advantage of the opportunity. I met someone through the organization that funded my fellowship. I said, I don't know what you need, but I will do that. I will do something. Let's figure this out. They offered something I didn't know if I could do, but I was hopeful and I figured it out. And that led to, and I'm still working with them. I'm still doing things for Open Society Foundations, and that was 10 plus years ago. 11 years ago?
Wow.
Yeah, great, yeah. Yes. So, poornotguilty.org, that's another project that came out of, I won't even go through the details, but like, it was networking, like, that same OSF, Brett. Brett was like, my former
The
colleague.
guy at OSF.
The guy at OSF,
Brett.
he's no longer there, but at the time, Brett. Brett was like, I was at University of Miami as a professor. My former OSF colleague is going to be a professor at University of Miami, you should meet her. And now I've been collaborating with Tamar for, I've lost track, 4 or 5 years? Poornotguilty.org, another one for you. Decriminalizing petty offenses. Another thing I didn't know anything. So I work with a lot of lawyers now because she's a lawyer, a human rights lawyer, and so I do a lot of social justice, human rights work by collaborating with experts and trying to figure out what do we really need to understand, like what is the essence, because like they'll get really deep in the policy and the history. The average consumer doesn't need to know, like the other person you're trying to like change needs to just know this much to like be interested enough to dig deeper. So trying to figure out what is the most like important part of the messaging and turn that into something that people can play and learn from.
Totally. That's really interesting.
I also run a lab called Matters at Play. So like immigration matters at play. I have an immigration project. Social justice matters at play.
Is that like mattersatplay.com?
Yes. I had to think about that. I was like, work? No, it's .com. Okay, correct. But you can also find it somewhere on like the CDM site. On my bio, actually, I don't know. I should put it on my bio.
You should.
I'm like 50-50 that's on there. Yeah, okay.
I can put a link in the DeFRAG Discord, which you should join.
Join
Yes.
the Discord.
Yeah.
A random lady came up to me and was like, that was really good. Did you write that? And I said, yes, thank you so much, I did. And she said, come to this invite-only writers workshop at the Cards Against Humanity headquarters next week. And I said, what? And so next week rolls around. I did have class. I did skip it.
It's okay. I forgive you.
Thank you. Thank you for
all faculty.
Thank you. Yeah. So I skipped class and I ended up taking the Brown Line to Armitage and then walking. Oh. Maybe we need to like sometimes we need to like wave a little.
Okay, no ghosts. I swear this room's not haunted.
And so I took the Brown Line to Armitage and I got off and I walked past the river, past Lincoln Yards, and there's this squat little building that's covered in graffiti, and that's the Cards Against Humanity headquarters. The creators of the game are actually from a suburb of Chicago. They're like 6 friends who are now incredibly rich beyond imagining. But there's like a literal room in there. So you walk in there and it's like an open plan office. It kind of looks a little like this actually, with a lot of like standing desks and little like pods. And I went in there were about 40 other people in a room just like this. And we listened to the then head writer of the game like talk about the process. and we spent a whole day like workshopping material and like talking to each other and learning more about the game in the process. And at the end of the workshop, which was like 6 hours long, we were told to email in everything that we wrote that day, and we would be contacted back if they were interested. And so I emailed my stuff in, and I was like, oh, cool. That was like an amazing experience. I proceeded to then promptly forget about it, get an internship that like took me to DC for the summer, and just do that. And then in the middle of my internship, like 3 months later, I got an email saying, hey, we want to hire you. When can you show up? And I said, oh my God, I'm gonna be in DC for like the next 2 months. Like, what am I gonna do? And so, you know, I can't fake not being there. So I was just honest. And I said, I would love to accept this opportunity. I'm currently out of state, doing a wild internship with the US State Department. I will be back in August, late August. Can you please wait? And they said yes. So after my internship ended, I flew back to Chicago, and then I started working there. It was 3-hour shifts, 2 times a week. So I would go there in the morning. I could like plan my class schedule around it. There were about 11 of us in the room at the time. It like grows and shrinks anywhere from like 13 to 8. And I was there for about a year. And the process for writing an analog game like Cards Against Humanity that is like very linear in its gameplay is a lot of playtesting and a lot of data.
Play testing, I'm gonna highlight that. You should be doing a lot of play testing all the time and starting it very early.
So what playtesting looked like for us was you can do it like in any population in like any scale, right? So a playtest would be the 11 of us sitting in a room, one of us like pitches a card, and then we all have like black cards and white cards stacked up on top of us. And then we're just reading it and playing the card, and then if we laugh, then it goes in a spreadsheet. And then that spreadsheet then filters out to playtesters within the community who are like beta testing material. I was a mule at one point, and a mule is when you take a freshly minted copy of still not printed like beta material, take it to someone's house, and then invite them to play it, and then write down everything that they laugh at, and then take that box because it has proprietary material in it, and then go home. I signed an NDA for my second job. I also signed an NDA for Cards Against Humanity. Yeah.
With the playtesters.
I'm actually, yeah, I feel like they might have, but it was a little bit of a special case because for me, I was playtesting the Cards Against Humanity family game, which means that minors were also involved. And so as long as the parents signed an NDA, then, you know, the kids are kids, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Want to add anything? If you're interested in games, you might actually want to look into and explore improv because I think it will inform your design process. Amy sounds like, you know, was an improv and then was able to apply it the other direction, but I am not familiar with the DePaul scene and for improv, but I'm selling it now. Like I think just in Chicago, you're in the city, explore improv because I think it will help you become a better designer.
First got it.
That's a good question. Usually in school when you're programming for your classes and your homework and everything, it's pretty small stuff that you are usually the sole author of, or if it's a group, it's only a few people. And when you go to work on a AAA game, it's hundreds of thousands of files written by people across decades who are there or aren't there or don't remember what they wrote many years ago, or this was the best we could do at the time and we had to get the game out the door and that system should be different, but changing it is scary. So school doesn't teach you that well how to work with legacy code. It's not necessarily school's fault, but like, cause like, how can you? I don't know, that's a different question, but so one of the more surprising things is there's kind of a gulf of experience of if you have done that or have never done that. And I think that's how my internship tended to lead to being employable for my other job, where it's like, a lot of times when you're getting hired out of school, it's with the expectation that you haven't done that. And there's a lot of just practice and trial and error and discovery that goes into doing that for the first time. And it's still like, even now, I mean, I've been doing it for like 9 years, and it's still, you know, not the easiest thing in the world to find what's wrong. You know, sometimes it's hours of like stepping through code and learning about systems that you don't understand, and there are no comments and there's nobody you can ask. So getting practice at that, I mean, I could say you should try to contribute to an open source project, or you should try to use an engine that includes the source code in your classes if you have the chance. I don't know if it's something that you can do even on your own without, you know, a team to work with, but I think you can make progress on your own at least. So that was kind of surprising when you start. It's very overwhelming.
Totally. And what does a typical work week look like for you? Like, are you in office? Are you at home? What does your setup look like?
These days, I'm usually at home. Before the pandemic, we were in office every day. Wargaming was kind of cool about working from home as needed, and NetherRealm wasn't, and so both had to change. So we are currently not required to go back at all, but I like going back because I like my coworkers, and they are funny and nice to be around and give me energy to work and see cool stuff that other people are doing. You know, it kind of depends on your personality, but I find that being at home can be isolating. Even when people are on Slack and Zoom and whatever, it's still not quite the same. But a typical week for me, I don't know, I don't plan all that well. So I usually come in each day and look at my list of tasks. Or I guess like, either I'm working on the thing I was working on yesterday, or I finished it at like 6 p.m. and then I come in the next day and look at my list of tasks and see what the next most important thing is. It's very self-motivated. I guess it's possible you could have a job where your boss is like very micromanaging, and it's like, okay, you finish that task, here's your next one. I've mostly never had bosses like that, because they, you know, it helps them if you can figure out what the next most important thing to do is. So it's kind of, sometimes I ask about what they think, but it's a lot of like, all right, this is the next most important thing, and a lot of times I'm working with users. Like if I'm working on the cinematic tools, I'm working with a cinematic artist to like, how do I reproduce this? How often is this happening? You know, is there a workaround? Is it blocking you from working? Is it blocking outsourcers from working? Like, there's a lot of different ways to gauge how important something is. And then it's a lot of kind of what I was saying, like, all right, I can't really ask anybody about this, or like, I'm the expert, so other people can ask me about this, but there's nobody I can go to. So it's kind of figuring it out on my own and asking for help if I need to, and you know, I can ask some of the leads, like if I'm really stuck, about kind of looking at it together. But you know, typically it's a lot of like working on your own on the actual issues, and then going to other people when you need information or you need help making decisions.
That makes a lot of sense.